Hello, and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On this episode, I am going to talk about ageism. I'm going to talk about age gap relationships. I'm going to talk about bigotry. I'm going to talk about insults within the community. It kind of goes back to when I was talking a couple of episodes ago about civil discourse and society. What I'm really talking about is women, and I'm sorry, I know how this is going to come across, and I'm okay with that, but women attacking men because men date younger women. I don't, some do, but the problem is there and after, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in because there's a lot to say here. That the problem is what these posts, when angry feminists write them, and that's really what they are. They're angry feminists because men are dating younger women. I'm not talking about the men that I would exclude outside of the general population of men that aren't respectful, that are disrespectful towards women, that are condescending, snobbish, brutish. Those are outside the norms, right? That's not typical male behavior. But what happens is there has been conditioning over hundreds of years that men date younger women. That's what everybody's told. One thing that seems to be missing when these discussions start to happen is the biological dimorphism component, the nature component, the sexualized differences within the species component. We just look at these relationships and go, oop, disgusting, and the dogpiling begins. The insults start getting levied. What I tend to find interesting when these conversations start happening, when people start making these posts, they start talking about it on Twitter or Instagram, or they talk about it on Facebook or other social media platforms in the BDSM community, is that they attack men. The constant attack is always against men. Men only date women that are under 30. Is the number one thing I start hearing. So then they go into, oh, well, they're grooming. They love using the word grooming. Grooming is a technique by pedophiles. So we probably, since that's the word of the day that seems to be getting thrown around a lot. A pedophile is someone who actually has sexual attraction towards a younger child, usually under the age of about 13. It's anybody under the legal age, right? When they're in middle to late adolescence, the terminology changes. However, from 18 on, regardless of what your personal insight belief, the law declares, and in some countries it's even younger, as young as 16. Some countries around the world it's 14. But at 18, they legally decide in the United States and Canada and a couple of other places in the world, you're an adult. You're allowed to start making adult decisions. And those decisions are limited or unlimited as you grow older. What you do within those decisions is up to you. So the first part is they'll come in, that men are grooming 18-year-olds. That's always the interesting first-hand trope. So apparently women, you are, according to these other women, are idiotic. You're stupid. You're a moron. You don't really understand anything about the world. You are too gullible. You're too stupid. That's pretty much what they're saying. When they make these posts, that's number one. That's the first thing. Number two, then they come at it with the psychological trope that the prefrontal cortex, that you don't mature cognitively until you're 25. When people use this argument, I think they're not even actually have read the study that was conducted on this. And that actually speaks more to males than it does females. Females, their cognitive skew compared to men, they tend to cognitively start peaking in their full development right around the ages of between 21 and 23. Males cognitively, and it's not all of them, but they start to peak anywhere between 23 as late as 25. But so that's the second trope that comes out. So number one, they're grooming because women are stupid, which is what they're saying. And then number two, that you're not even smart enough because you're pretty much, I guessing. They're saying you're suffering some sort of mentally debilitating disease that's preventing you. So at 25, you still can't make a choice. So if 18, you're not smart enough, you're obviously still not smart enough till you're 25. I fail to understand that at all. Then what they're trying to do is dictate a term and a relationship for everybody to date at, which they feel is okay. So right here, right off the bat, when I look at this psychologically, so this is, I'm offended because you haven't chosen me. And what really kicked this off was a post on a social media platform, on a BDSM platform, and it always starts out the same. Being in this location helped me, get over this fear. This helped me overcome my own body dysmorphia, so on and so forth. And then the second part of it starts moving into shaming, attacking men, because ultimately this comes down to it's always a man's fault. I responded in kind because then the problem is all this becomes a dog whistle. So all the men who come in who are white knighting, and that's what they're doing. They're white knighting on these posts and saying, yep, all men who do this are disgusting. Again, they have apparently failed biology, or they didn't go far enough in biology to understand how nature works, right? So let's really talk about it. At the age of 20 years old, a woman has far more mating capabilities than that of a man of her same age. So a 20-year-old male will, while he is, sexually active and he, wants to find a mate, he has far fewer choices. Where on the other hand, a female's choices are wide and vast. It's not hard to see this. This is a reality. There's nothing evil about it. There's not a conspiracy about it. We're not all getting together, right? The mating trajectory of the two different sexes changes throughout stages in our life. All right? It's just like no one seems to complain when the 18-year-old male is sleeping with a 35-year-old woman or 40-year-old woman. That's fine. She is in her sexual prime. That's sexual empowerment. There's nothing wrong with that, right? She wants to get it on with the dude cutting their grass. That's fine. No one's complaining. But these same attacks that are so often geared at males, I would say about 90 to 95% of the time, if not higher, always fail to leave out or target women, especially within the BDSM community. The ultimate problem with this is if you are attacked, this is supposed to be a community of acceptance, diversity, but it really isn't any longer. What I've seen with this new age wave of feminism mixed in with these vanilla kinksters. So when I say that, I mean these are non-practitioners coming in, and they don't, they haven't been on the scene long. And these aren't excuses, by the way, but they don't understand the culture. They don't understand the community. They don't understand rules. They just see things and go, that's wrong. They will shame people because somebody is a masochist. I've spoken about this recently when I talked about your kink is not my kink. They will, whatever they deem is outside of their normal purview is now harmful. This was the exact reason why people that are into fetishisms are in places like Cuffs and Alt.com and FetLife, because they can share and these experiences and find people that resonate in some sort of commonality. And the problem that I also see when I see these types of posts, that in this post went on and on about, when I was young, I've spent my life being sexualized and servicing older men. Well, unless, that's a choice. You made a choice to do that. Now, if you were trafficked, I'm sorry. You know what? Let's get you some help. Let's have those people arrested. I'm 100% behind you on that. I had a great colleague of mine. She, in her graduate year of grad school, when we were in grad school together, helped break up sex trafficking ring in Colorado, of all places. I think it was fantastic. I'm all for that. But this person isn't talking about this person that was sitting here complaining on her post. And by the way, when you go through and start looking at all of her photographs where she claims that she's so objectified by males, almost every picture she has on there is self-degradation and self-sexualization. And again, I just talked about these two things in the last 2 weeks. I'm not really, I know it sounds like I'm attacking this person, but the point I'm actually trying to make is that these people, these women, or this particular woman, and she's not the only one that does it, but I see this quite often, make these posts up, but yet they put themselves out there. In a lot of her posts, she talks, if you didn't know her age, she looks like she's 18 or 19. Well, no one is telling her to do that. She's making that choice. If anything, other women have shown her that Glamour magazine, Cosmopolitan, because, and then they, comes back, oh, well, that's what men want. Well, they go hand in hand. How you represent yourself is going to be the perception we can get. I mean, yes, a woman with a low cut top is going to probably attract more males than a woman that's dressed like a nun, because perception is everything. But this becomes the problem. Then we start attacking, because then as we start getting older, that mating cycle changes. As a male starts to get older and his career prospects, for the most part, change, and he's in a stable career and he's maybe looking for a more solid relationship. He's done with his partying days. He wants to settle down. His choices for mates start to go up, because women's, as they age, biologically, unfortunately, and that's not a part of the patriarchy or, some sort of misogynistic master plan to keep women down. It is literally part of biology that, women, not all women, but women start to slow down in their development of their reproductive cycles. They're gaining towards the later stages of their life where they're going to be a lot closer to entering menopause than they are away from it. Just like on men, things start to sag, things aren't as tight. And attraction and beauty has changed in the eyes of those who perceive it. Well, congratulations. Life isn't fair. But just because you're mad about nature doesn't really care about how hurt your feelings are. So we end up rolling back into this trope of, oh, well, you're in an age gap relationship. And let me define that for you. An age gap relationship is usually any type of relationship between two individuals where there's a greater discrepancy in age of at least 6 years or more. Some people can define it as, 8 or 10. That's fine. I think about one of the couples that, I follow him on Instagram because I like his work. I follow Hugh Jackman, him and his wife. There is a huge gap between them. I believe it's about 16 years. Does anyone complain about that? No, we don't. We celebrate it. We celebrate it as a society. But he genuinely loves his wife, and she genuinely loves her man, or her husband. We don't have a problem with it. He's not concerned, at least publicly, he doesn't seem to be concerned that they're, he's getting older and things aren't as tight. And I'm sure she's not talking about his saggy genitalia, and he's definitely not talking about if her breasts are sagging or not. That doesn't matter, right? And there was hundreds of examples, if not more, of older women. Olivia Wilde now with Harry Styles. It's a huge age gap in there, I think. Regardless of the fact that whether I think it's great or not, that's not my opinion. I don't have an opinion. That's not for me to comment on. I don't really care about it. But all these others, they start to speak out against these things, and they get angry because they're the ones being turned down. And then so what it is then these attacks start rolling forward. So in this post, as she continues forward, she starts talking about Miss USA, who tragically committed suicide in the beginning of 2022. And this poster doesn't even get this fact right, that the Miss USA killed herself because of ageism. That somebody thought that she wasn't worried about it. Miss Christ thought, the person who wrote this thing is saying that Miss Chelsea Christ, which was her name, killed herself because she's getting too old. Actually, that was never stated. She was actually battling with depression, loneliness. She was an accomplished attorney working long hours. But ultimately, are we going to know the cause of her death? No, but because she talked about getting closer to 30, and she had made some comments about she doesn't really want to turn 30. Nobody wants to get older. That's part of life. But there was no direct implication that her death was caused because of her turning 30, which then and that was into relation that because men told her she was some sort of hag or over the hill, dried up prune. No one said that. At least nothing that I've seen or I've read has said that. And if that was said, those people are wrong and terrible. And those aren't the type of people that belong in our generalized society. But unfortunately, social media isn't kind. Social media reacts because it's given the voice to the generalized public, to the people who were, back in the 80s, didn't have this ability to go outside and be morons outside of a 2 square mile area. And other people would call them up for it. Now they have the ability to talk about a subject, in South Sudan, not know anything about it, and be insultive and be rude and be a jerk. But they don't have to be there. They can be sitting at their comfy little home in Nova Scotia. But when you link these types of things, so getting back to this person who wrote this is linking this death, this tragedy, to about ageism and everything else, and it had nothing to do with it. But see, that doesn't fit the narrative. We leave out the facts. We omitted the facts. So what does that do? It spins up the frenzy even more. And that's ridiculous by nature. This woman didn't kill herself because she was turning 30 and she thought life was over and nobody would want her. That was far from the truth. But see, it doesn't fit a narrative. And this is what this new wave of feminism has done. And then this person goes on and continues to talk about, older women, they actually look better and they feel, because they're past all the bullshit. Women in their 30s and 40s and 50s are through the bullshit. They're also settled in their ways. They're willing to accept what they're willing to accept, and they're willing not to accept what they don't want to accept. And that goes for all of us. That's not just women. By the time I hit 30, I wasn't in the mood for somebody who wanted to party every weekend. I knew I didn't want somebody, when I was living in the States, sitting there wanting to go to a sporting event every weekend because I worked hard. And that's not what I want. I had different goals. So I aligned myself with a partner that had the same goals. So then we come, as this person is rambling on in this completely misguided attempt of a post, and they're just, it's cool. It's better and it's what I see with these new age feminists. They lump together all of these tropes. So we got to make sure we're attacking men. We're calling them predators. We're calling them pedophiles. We're assaulting them. And it's ridiculous. It's abhorrent behavior. It's not behavior that is conducive to a society that should be moving forward. It's definitely not an all-inclusive society. So then she goes on to write, talks about what each phrase that she's heard, how she actually means it and equates it. So the first one is that women over 30 are hags. And from there, she goes on to describe what that actually means. And that apparently means that all women over 30 are wise to men's predatory baloney. First off, that's just not true. The first part is no more true than the second part. Because, again, what we're starting to do is now we're saying that men sit around in corners in the deep, dark recesses of society in the back alleys, and we're sitting in the shadows just waiting for a woman to come by so we can be derogatory towards her. I haven't seen, I've lived in a lot of countries around the world. I've lived in Europe. I've spent most of my life in the United States. I have lived now in Oceania, and I lived in East Asia. I have never seen men catcalling in the over a dozen countries I've lived in 40 some years. Never seen it. Now, I'm not talking about when we go to a bar and guys are been drinking and that behavior starts, and that's not acceptable. I agree. Again, I've never ever even seen it at a nightclub I've ever been to, or a bar when I was shooting pool. But I have seen people on both sides like heavily flirtating with each other and wanting to attract each other. So that's the first statement that's kind of ridiculous. And then she goes into the second trope of younger women have a certain desirable energy, and then it's equated to younger women are easier to manipulate. So again, we're coming back to saying, okay, all of you young women, apparently, you're morons, you're stupid, you're not smart enough to know this person knows you should go to them and find the person you are allowed to date when your age is acceptable. It doesn't matter if you want to date an older guy. It doesn't matter if you like the guy with the 12-pack who is 40 years old. Nope, you can't date him because he's a predator, and you're too stupid to know so because they could just manipulate you. The next little trope that comes in is men are biologically wired to be attracted to younger women. My God, she actually put a statement in there that makes some sense and actually has some validity to it. Now, it doesn't really matter. Her equated that to I'm exclusively attracted to young women because I'm a fucking gross predator and probably a pedophile. So there it is. There's the trope. There are the insults. There is anything disgusting that comes out. It's right there. So obviously, at some point she was dating or was attracted to someone, or she got involved with somebody who was older, and then all of a sudden was I don't know, offended at something. Ironically enough, this person describes themselves as, they call themselves a middle. If you don't know what a middle is so they don't quite identify as a young child, right? They identify as somebody old, in the pre-adolescence to adolescence. Well, ironically enough, this person identifies that they're 12 years old. And I'm on a self-declarative statement. I'm here because I want older men jerking off to me and degrading me. Isn't that ironic? That she constantly, or she's openly stating she wants to be degraded, but yet is offended because older men are dating somebody younger. It's to not even understand. There is no logic to all of it. Then she goes on into some trope that she says that at some point she felt that, approaching her 30s, she was going to commit suicide. So this is a cry for help, that she's obviously has some other deep-seated psychological issues, possibly some traumas in there, and that she's now, what we're talking about is transference. We're transferring those feelings from what's going on internally and externalizing it on something else to make ourselves feel better. And that's a terrible thing to do, because the problem is actually not solved. The problem will keep growing within. It'll keep manifesting, causing depression and all of these other things, and suicidal ideations come in. So this person closes out their post of, I see how beloved, respected, and adored I am by non-predatory men. These are the people you want to spend your life with. Good men who see the value and beauty in everyone. So apparently there is a difference. But what she's really saying, because the gist of this post is talking about that she believes that men somehow believe younger women have more value than and are more attractive than older women. And then tells them to shut the fuck up. You're ugly and irrelevant. And then she closes out finally was, I feel one step closer to emotional freedom. So this was just an emotional temper tantrum being released. This wasn't based in anything. This was an emotional release. That's a conundrum because she wants to be degraded by older men. She feels like she's 12 years old, which is disgusting to me. Because now you're saying I feel like I'm 12 years old in my psychological mindset. I'm taking these photos. I believe I'm 12 years old. I want older men masturbating over my 12-year-old photos. It's disgusting. Contributing to the problem that she's blaming. But this is what I also see with vanilla-ized kinksters coming into the lifestyle, that they don't have to take any responsibility at all. They don't need to take responsibility. All they have to do is just blame others, and that's good enough. That's perfect enough. It's never anyone else's fault anymore. This generation right now is now, because we moved out of it. Generation X was heavily based into entitlement, and so they were entitled to everything, but they were blamed for nothing, and they weren't responsible for anything, and that's where we are stuck at now. And it's disgusting behavior. It's ageism, it's sexism, it's bigotry, it's insultive. It's misandric. And I get to the point where I'm at such a loss when I see all of these things, and you sit and you try to explain. Right? But science only works for people in this generation when science benefits their argument. Otherwise, science is not correct. So all the hundreds, if not thousands of years of evolution of the species, of the human species, mean nothing. Nothing. And that's ridiculous. And it is upsetting, because what I'm starting to see is I have clients who are younger. I have male clients that are younger, that are highly stressed, highly isolated. They are nervous about wanting to talk and approach a female because their belief is how they are going to be construed. And yet I find it then ironic that I start to read all of these posts from feminists saying, oh, well, no real man wants to date me. Yes, because they're not even dating men. They're dating feminized boys that have been told masculinity is wrong. And that's really the other part of this woman's post, is that she's attacking masculinity. And masculinity has been under assault for a very long time. Now, there are men who have not made the word masculine a good word. And I agree. But the problem is when these women say not all men, but all men, they are collectively lumping everyone together in every society, every culture, every race, every religion around the world, because you're saying all men. And they don't really seem to understand. But see, I don't see these people speaking directly on topics of like child marriage in Iran. I think it's disgusting and abhorrent. Right? I don't see them talking about genital mutilation because of a certain religion from the Middle East. I don't see them talking about financial dominatrixes that are bleeding dry 19 and 20-year-old males who are in an attempt to find someone to serve, yet all they do is drain their bank accounts and then leave them and ghost them. Now, we're not talking about that because all men are predators, right? All men are pedophiles. And then these types of posts make traction. This belief is carried forward. Now, I mean, I'm thankfully, I'm way, way outside of the dating pool. Like, I'm happy. Like, I've met someone, and there was a solid DS relationship there, and it's healthy and functional. But I can't imagine today having to deal with this, how it's evolving. And it's disgusting, and it's abhorrent behavior. If it continues, what I really see is the decline of BDSM, at least the way that BDSM, that as I know it and as I respect it and practice it, versus what they're putting online. Places like FetLife or Alt.com or Cuffs or Collar Me, they're not. Those aren't extensions of BDSM. These are commodified websites where people are just selling themselves. A lot of women are ironically selling themselves through OnlyFans or prostitution. That's a different story, and I'm not going to go into that. That's not for this episode. But if we're going to continue down this market at this point, if we are going to continue the attacks on men because of who they choose to date in their latter years of life, well, someone like this is going to grow old, bitter, and alone. She's made it her joy to attack the very people she wants, according to her, masturbating over her photos. And it's ridiculous. You know, I've been a part of this community for over 20 years. I've now included my practice for the last, couple. I'm happy to be a part of such an accepting and diverse community that accepts anybody of different races, sexes, religions, sexual orientations, because none of that really truly matters in the fetish community, right? Now that's changing. Men have to be told what and how to toe the line. So apparently, all you women out there until you're at least 25 can't get involved with anybody in the BDSM community, because if you do and they're older than that, those people are pedophiles. They have nothing to offer for you. They're just pedophiles. They're just groomers, right? They're just a predator. They're nothing more. And this is when I went back and I said, this is why masculinity is under attack. This is why it's been labeled toxic. Because new wave feminism and having all of its problems just lumps men together. We've disregarded any signs because it only applies to when, like I said earlier, only applies when these groups say so. That's not really a community I want to be a part of. It's why more and more BDSM practitioners have gone back underground. They are staying away from the dungeons now. The community that I practice in, they're done. Because this stuff has leaked into this new generation, the TNG, that's what it stands for, the new generation, has really brought this infectious attitude to BDSM. And it's unhealthy and it's unproductive because they don't agree. More so, they don't really understand, but they attack what they don't understand, which is what fear is. And then label it with somebody being a bigot or a predator or a pedophile or homophobic or whatever other negative connotation you're going to put and attack somebody with. I don't tend to stand for that. I tend to call that behavior out, and I do so for men. I've called men out before, but I'm getting tired of seeing men under attack, especially when I work with men who suffer mental health issues. Maybe it's time for us to start thinking about not only when we're putting these things up. First off, having all the correct information would be better so we don't look incorrect, we don't look wrong, and we're not lumping tropes together or putting incorrect information like the reason why somebody sadly took their own life has nothing to do with what somebody is having a temper tantrum about. Or maybe the fact that they're rejected and they're hurt, and so then they're writing something and then they're attacking all men, but they're not attacking all men. It's mind-boggling. It's a my God, I wouldn't know what to do now if I was 20 years old. I don't think I could navigate this world. I think I'd just give up. That's right. There's another new saying that's out there. Incels and celibates. That's the other famous attack that's now just everybody's in celibate. I think it's humorous at best. There's these people use these ad hominems like they're going out of style. And it's sad for the BDSM community because, like I said, as more and more people go back and take their houses back to private parties the where BDSM really was in the 60s and 70s, because it was so shamed by the grander vanilla community until it really kind of started breaking free in the 80s and the 90s, and people started, went out and made dungeons and all of these things. This is what we're starting to see now. I can understand why. It's why I practice or I play privately. Because what I do is not the business of anybody else, and I'm sure as hell not going to let anybody else dictate it. Nor should you. And before we get wrapped up in these types of things, I think these are the things we need to consider. But when I see somebody calling out and saying the reason, that they're having psychological distress over who they're dating or how they're perceived, when they very well made themselves the object of that perception and continue to do so willingly, posts like these are done no more than just for attraction, likes and loves to feed an ego. And ultimately, what do? What has a post like this done? It's hurt the community. And that's something to really think about. Until next time, everyone, be safe and stay kinky.